Today, we're going to continue our exploration of solving systems of equations. The solution for a system of equations is exactly the same thing as it was when we were graphing. We're looking for where these equations intersect. Are they going to intersect in one point, in infinite points, or will they be parallel and never intersect, meaning there's no solution? Graphing is one method in order to solve a system of equations, but there's also some algebra methods that we need to understand and be able to do as well. And today we're going to learn about one of those algebraic methods, and it's called substitution. All right, so we're going to use our understanding of algebra and solving equations in order to find the solution to a system of equations. If you want to check it using your graph, that's fine, but we're going to use substitution. You have to be able to show that you can do that. Okay, so what substitution method basically does is we take one equation and substitute it into the other equation, and then we solve it. So when you solve an equation, you guys know you can only have one variable, and we have two variables in each one of ours. But if you notice, so the first equation is y equals 2x, and then we have x plus y, 3y equals 56. So if you notice here, if I look at this right here, we have y and equals 2x. So they are equivalent. So you can think about this like synonyms. Another name for y is 2x because they mean the same amount. It's like 5 is the same thing as 2 plus 3. So whether I put 2 plus 3 or 5 in, it still means 5. So because I have two different ways of writing this value, I can use one of them and substitute it into the other equation so that I only have one variable to solve for. Let me show you what I mean. You ready? So another name for y is 2x. So instead of y in my second equation, I'm going to substitute 2x. Here we go. I'm going to rewrite my equation. I'm going to do x plus 3. And then instead of y, I'm going to write the other name for y, which is 2x. 3 times 2x, and that equals 56. Now, this is just a simple equation that we worked on earlier in this year, right? We have one variable, so we can solve it. So I have x plus 3 times 2 means I have 6 x's, and that equals 56. Now I have like terms on one side of the equation, so I have to combine them. So 6 plus 1 is 7x equals 56. And then in order to undo the times 7, you guys know, right? We have to divide by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1, which means I'm left with x. And then x equals 56 divided by 7 is 8. So what do you think this means? We just figured out the x value of the ordered pair that is the solution to this equation. We just figured out the x value. So now I know that there's one solution. What? So my next step, I need to take that x value and substitute it in to either equation. It doesn't matter which one. I can pick whichever one looks easiest to me. I think this one does. And that will tell me the y value. So y equals 2x. I know that the x value is 8. So to figure out the y value, I'm going to substitute that in. And I know that my y value is 16. So what does this mean? This means that the solution, there's one solution. And that solution is 8, 16, right? One solution. So let's take a look at the steps now, and you might want to pause this video and write down the steps, but here's the steps. So the first step is to make sure that one equation has a y alone or an x alone, right? Those literal equations, we can move them around because that will give me a synonym or another name for one of the variables. Then I'm going to substitute this new amount into the other equation so that I only have one variable to solve for. Then I'm going to solve the equation, decide, how many solutions. If I have one solution, then I'm going to need to substitute in that value to one of the equations, doesn't matter which one, and then solve it. I'm going to try another one. All right, let's try another one. So those were the steps. You should probably write them down. You can shorten them if you need to. Pause the video if you need time, but then we're going to move into a second example. All right, so our second example, we have two equations. We have x plus 3y equals 7, and we have 2x plus 4y equals -6. So I want to make my life easy, and I want to do this efficiently. So I'm looking for a variable that's just a variable that I can get by itself really easy. So if I look at this one, do you guys see how we have 1x here? I can easily make x alone by doing one step. All I have to do is subtract 3y, and now x is alone. X is going to equal 7 minus 3y. Right? If I was going to try and get y alone, I would have to subtract x and then divide by 3, and I'd have a lot of fractions, and it would not be efficient. The same thing is true about this equation. In this equation, in order to get either x or y alone, I would have to subtract or add and then divide. So I'm looking for where I have an x or a y all by itself, and then I can easily add or subtract what's next to it to make it set up to substitute. Okay, so now that I did that, let's take a look at what I have. So I can see that I have x, but another name for x is 7 minus 3y because they mean the same thing. They're exactly the same. So I did this first step. I solved and made y x equals. Now I'm going to substitute the new name wherever I see x. So instead of x, I'm going to write 7 minus 3y. So I'm going to actually, let me rewrite this here. So I have, we have 2x minus 4y equals -6. So here I go. I'm going to do my substitution. Instead of x, what am I going to write? You guys know, that's right, 7 minus 3y in place of x. I'm going to use my parentheses because I have a binomial. There's a couple terms that need to make up x. And then I'm going to subtract my 4y, and that equals -6. You need to pause for the video for a minute, look at that, think about what we just did. This is confusing, that's okay, it's new to your brains. You need to take some time and really kind of rewatch and think about what we're doing. And most of you have got the equations down. You did a really nice job with that. So now this is just a multi-step equation. We're going to solve for y, which is our only variable. We're going to start by simplifying this side. We do that by multiplying what's outside the parentheses by everything inside the parentheses. So 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times -3 is -6y. I don't multiply the 2 by this because it's outside the parentheses. So I'm just going to copy -4y equals -6. Now I still have like terms I need to group together. So I'm going to group together my y's. And I end up with 14 minus 10y equals -6. All right, the next step, I need to undo addition or subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. That eliminates that. I'm left with negative 10y equals negative 20. Please make sure you're using your calculators for your calculations, just to double check and make sure there's no errors. Don't forget the negative sign. Now to undo a times negative 10, we divide by negative 10. This is fun, isn't it? All right, and then that will eliminate that, and I'm left with y equals a positive 2. So what does that tell me about the solution? Yes, the solution, there's going to be one solution because we got a y value. So we need, our next job is to find the other value. We're going to take this y value, we're going to substitute it into one of our original equations. Now this one looks a little complicated. You can pick either one. I'm going to pick whichever one's easier. So I feel like this one's going to be easier. This x plus 3y equals 7. So instead of a y, I'm going to substitute a 2. So x plus 3 times 2 equals 7. And now I've got to do a little bit of solving. So x plus 6 equals 7. And then we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. And we end up with x equals 1. So now my solution, I have one solution. And that solution is 1, 2. All right, so one other thing, you know that sometimes we have no solution and sometimes we have infinite solutions. What will happen is if you solve this and your variables disappear, if your variables disappear, that it means that you either have one or no solution, right? So in this case, my variable didn't disappear. I ended up with a number for my variable. And so that means that there's one solution. But if your variables disappear, and let's see here, if your variables disappear, that means that when they're basically the same amount on each side. When they disappear, if the numbers that are left are the same, it means infinite solutions. And if your variables disappear when you're solving and the numbers are different, that means no solution. So as you practice today, you may run into one of those. Most of them will have one solution. But if you are solving and your variables disappear, if your sides are equal, that means you're working with the same line. So there's infinite solutions. If your sides are different, the numbers are different on either side, that means that there's no solution. Those will be parallel lines. So just go ahead and practice as best you can today on your worksheet and check your answers. If you want, you can check your answers with your Desmos calculator, but you need to know how to solve these using the substitution method.